Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, aka Big Head. Hey, welcome back to Big Head on the Block. Today I have a special guest, a subject matter expert on all things related to police work, a guy who was a mentor to me and a very special person in my life, Gerry Bloom, aka The Boss. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Good deal. Listen, you are, as I said, a subject matter expert in a wide variety of topics. But today I want to talk about specifically the response that we're seeing nationally to a lot of these incidents where mass participation from some group targets police. And most recently, something happened in New York. And in this particular incident that I was referring to that happened in New York about 3 or 4 days ago, maybe around August 5th or so, the police there was a mass gathering because a social media influencer indicated that he was going to give away free PlayStations and some money. So many people showed up that the police had to respond. They had a mass response with their tactical team. I think they called up 1,000 officers to help. But during the course of this event, the participants started throwing bottles, rocks, and other things at the police officers. And the thing that alarms me the most is that the police are always on the defensive in these situations. Do you think, as a former uniform patrol commander, that a tactical response to maybe push the people outward instead of just creating a defensive posture would be more practical and maybe less dangerous to the police?
Well, let me first start by saying that I'm retired 10 years displaced from being in police work. But if I was still the uniform patrol commander, my responsibility for the subordinates under me is, number one, to give them the proper equipment and tell them what they're up against at this situation. And they have to have the gear on. All this stuff that's going on nationally about we're not going to gear out with proper riot gear because it's going to show an aggressive posture is a bunch of crap, okay? These people chose the course of the day. If they came out there to throw bottles at the police and they're looking for trouble, then we should give it to them. And we should give it to them heavy-handedly. You know, it's like General Patton said, World War II, and I'm an old school guy. My dad was a World War II guy. I don't want you to die for your country. I want you to make the other poor son of a bitch die for his. If these people are looking for trouble, I think you should give it to them. Anytime you keep stepping back and saying, when you got all these social workers and people in police chief jobs now saying, we got to do it different, we got to do it different. Well, we have the pilot program now. They damn near burned down America in 2021. They pulled statues down. They did whatever they did. They threw Molotov cocktails at policemen in courthouses. They did everything they wanted. Society has always been based on the number of good people in it, that you never have enough police to police a city, no matter how big or small it is. You're never going to have enough if everybody turns rogue and crazy. So therefore, when you send the boys out in the street and you have to fight, boys and girls, you send them out with the proper equipment, tear gas, whatever it takes, and you put them down hard so they leave it alone.
And one thing that both you and I think, have had experiences with large crowds. I was actually involved in the protest in 2016 in Baton Rouge, and if you don't take an aggressive posture, if you don't move the people that are protesting against you, you leave your officers subjected to death or great bodily harm in many instances. You know, there were some officers that got hurt in ours, but in Baton Rouge specifically, our response was to not allow the people. Baton Rouge actually gave us, at that point in time, gave us an example of how to properly control a crowd that's intent on rioting. They never gained any ground in Baton Rouge, but that seems to be a vision of the past. Nobody is willing to make police work look like what it has to be sometime, and that's violent. Police work is inherently violent at times. You don't have to be overly aggressive, but you also shouldn't sit back and allow your officers to be injured because you're scared of the public persona regarding your particular response. Is it the administrators? Is it the lack of I guess, support from the mayor administration, or do you think that it's just the media that has everybody so scared to be called racist or to be called heavy-handed?
Oh, I would say that it's both politics and the administration. I've been to every riot school that you can be to learn how to handle riots. You know the first thing they teach you? They teach you to bang that stick off the shield to intimidate them, to let them know that there's a fight that's coming. You know, that's the first thing they teach you. The second thing they teach you is if there's a lot of yelling and screaming, find the biggest mouth in the crowd that people will listen to and tuck him, handcuff him, and get him out of there to disrupt their organization. And that's what you try to do initially to make these people understand that you can't go down this road. But if you come out because you have to respond to like this situation in New York, and their response is to throw bottles at you, they chose the course of the day. There's not anybody on this earth going to come to me and say, you're a racist, you're this, you're that. If you throw a bottle at me, bitch, I'm coming back hard at you. I'm going to say, let the tear gas go and let's see where the chips fly, okay? Because you have no choice. If you retreat, then they're going to see that as a sign of weakness, and they're going to try and stomp all over you. And this is the mentality of the criminal mind. So anybody that hears this podcast and is sitting around drinking coffee at their counter that's never done this work that says, well, that's just crazy, it's going to cause more problems. No, it's not going to cause more problems. It's been proven time and time again. Look at the city of New Orleans. Everybody knew from the day I stepped foot in Louisiana, if you went down to New Orleans and caused any trouble, those cops were going to be heavy-handed with you because they had a lot of work to do and very few of them. And nobody went down there and cut up. Now they got all these people down there running that city that are social workers and not policemen, and that city's got murders, carjackings. Nobody wants to go there anymore.
Right, and Baton Rouge is experiencing a lot of the same issues with day-to-day activity in Baton Rouge, I guess. I believe that what you're saying is true, and I too believe that if you don't have the proper response, they will just continue to push, because we've seen it in the protests like in Seattle and Oregon and stuff like that. They even they got the cops in the building and then they tried to burn the building down. If you're not going to allow your officers to engage, and yes, the beating on the sticks, the moving in unison is something that is a detractor. It lets them know that, hey, we are here and we will fight you. Police aren't necessarily looking for a fight, and most people, they have the impression that if cops are out here on the front line, that they're looking for a fight. A cop's not looking for a hard day, people. Understand that. Cops would rather do nothing all day than to have to respond to murders and stuff like that. And they definitely ain't looking to necessarily engage thousands of people in the crowd. But I asked the administrators, the mayors, and a lot of people have got on board and realized that the tactics they're using are causing too many injuries and allowing their cities to be overtaken. So I see a little transition now, but not a whole lot, not enough, especially with what just happened in New York. It kind of perplexed me. The bottles are flying. You see cops trying to knock things down. One picked up a piece of plywood and tried to shield himself. But you have 1,000 cops, and I don't know, there were upwards of 20,000 or so people there, kids, videoing and stuff. But at some point in time, you have to move the crowd, let them know that you mean business. And do you think that we'll ever have a society where it's acceptable for the police to actually do their job, even though it may look bad?
Well, the number one thing, I don't want anybody to misconstrue anything that I said. I didn't say we go out there looking for trouble. You go out there and assess the situation. If trouble comes your way heavy-handedly, I say you go back at them. Do I think we're going to ever have a society? Well, let me tell you what I think about society right now in general. All these cell phones, every place you go sit in a restaurant and watch people looking at their cell phones, not talking. Their social skills are down. They've been dumbed down by society, playing on phones. They don't know how to interact or speak with people. When we were policemen in the early days, they taught us. If you were a white man going in a black neighborhood, you had to understand the family structure. You had to go in there and understand, in a lot of cases, that grandma was the head of household, and you had to respect her. If you disrespected her when you went out there, you were going to cause a problem. So you didn't disrespect her. And you and I and Chris actually ran into that problem one time on Tennessee. I went over to Grandma and I said, Grandma, we have to get this under control. It's up to me and you. And she stopped everything. Remember that incident?
Oh, yeah, I remember it vividly.
Okay, but that's what has to happen in society with police work now. There has to be education. These kids have to learn. Maybe you have to put it in school, what we're up against, because their mentality is we're going to do what we want. The police are going to conform, and they're going to just have to listen to what we say. And they're getting cops killed everywhere, and nobody's wanting the job anymore. Okay? Nobody wants to pay policemen, and that's been a problem for years. But I'm going to tell you the problem with not paying policemen. Don't be surprised when you read in the paper, like you read in Baton Rouge a couple of years ago, when they lowered all the standards just to get numbers, and they put away the matrix system and all that stuff that qualifies policemen for the academy, where it shows deception for theft or any other problems. All those things worked. And they didn't do it, and all of a sudden you read a headline about some policeman groping a girl. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. A policeman has a lot of power, and you should never, ever lower the standards for a policeman. You should make these policemen be above board and get the best that you can. Are there going to be a few to fall through the cracks? Well, absolutely. But it's your fault and the citizens' fault if you don't pay them a decent wage. Now, there isn't a person out here driving a UPS truck or a CEO of a bank that would do this damn job in Baton Rouge for $40,000 the way this city's upside down now because of ideology and politics of like, oh, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and promoting incompetent people. Okay,
right.
When I was in the police department, Greg Farris, Pat Englade, Jeff LaDuff, these were all smart people, and they were all chiefs of police. They knew how to do the job because they had done the job. They weren't some social worker that picked up a college degree along the way and knew a few politicians and got put in there. They knew the job. And you know what else they did? They surrounded themselves with smart people, and they always got good advice.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think's missing. You know, I've only been retired a couple years, and toward the end of my career, I saw that we got away from certain policing techniques and tactics, and I think it's a disservice to the community. I recently did a podcast with Chief Englade, and we talked about a lot of these topics. And the one thing that I think is missing is the street cop mentality, the cop that's okay going into the areas and being personable and being approachable. Now it appears, and it was happening toward the end of my career, that basically you just have call takers and information gatherers, kind of like the mall cop, the little joke they say, observe and report. It's almost like a lot of people are missing the dynamics of what being a cop is, especially if you're in uniform patrol. Now, as a uniform patrol commander, you had certain standards that you set for us, and you reviewed data. You found out who was working, who was not working, and such. From a perspective of a current uniform patrol commander, if you were there now, do you think that it's important to review the data and know who's working, and then tell your captains that work under you that run these precincts, hey, this is my expectation? I don't know if we have that anymore, but to me, I thought the system worked really well because crime was always down for the most part during my career and probably most of your career compared to what it is now.
Well, I think every commander's responsibility is to, if you're going to be entrusted by the chief of police to oversee precincts and operation, day-to-day operations for the safety of the citizenry, I think the commander needs to be on his game. There was an incident when I was a uniform patrol commander. I kept looking at the data, and I kept seeing nighttime burglaries out in the Coursey Boulevard area and car burglaries, and they weren't getting solved. So I came home one day, and I told my wife, Pam, I said, I'm going to polish the uniform up. I said, I'm going to work about 2 a.m. She said, why? What's going on? I said, well, there's something going on at nighttime, and nobody's catching a burglar. I got to go find out what the hell's going on. When I walked in that police station at 3 a.m. in the morning, there was a poker game going on, and every cop that was supposed to be on the street wasn't on the street. And I didn't say one word to those cops. I just said, I'm getting a cup of coffee, and I'm out of here. There's a lot of money on the table. You finish your poker game. And when I got out of my car, I picked up my cell phone, and I called that commander, and I said, your ass is in my office at 0800, and I didn't say 0802 or 803. And when he came in, I read him the riot act. I said, next time this happens, I'm going to fire your ass. You got 2 weeks to find a burglar.
Yeah,
He had the burglar in 2 weeks because he knew his ass was on the chopping block. Now, if a commander isn't looking at the data or watching these use of force reports where you may have a policeman overextending his authority, you don't correct that. That's when you wind up on the 6 o'clock news doing stuff bad. So that's how I think a commander should act. That's the way I acted. I didn't suspend anybody in that simply because they all deserved it. But my dad taught me a little management skill years ago. He said sometimes before you throw the employee off the cliff of being stupid, you pull them back and save them, and then you have a better employee. And that's pretty much what happened in that case, in my opinion. But you have to always look at the data, because if you don't, the chief is, and he's going to ask you the question, and if you don't have the answer, you're going to look incompetent.
Yeah, and, you telling that story, a lot of people don't understand, please have some downtime every now and then. And I've always found that you should have your fun, but you shouldn't necessarily do it at the expense. If you know there's something occurring out there, and you know as well as I do, because you came to me as my supervisor many times and told me what was going on and expected me to handle it. And I did. I did the best I could to try and represent the citizens. A lot of time these cops, they don't put into perspective that this could be their mom, their dad, their cousin, their brother, their sister, their aunt that's being victimized. And yeah, you can't be hyper vigilant all the time and 24/7 riding the streets. But you do need to focus on the trends that are occurring and stop them from occurring. So you were always fair. You were probably, if not the best, one of the two best people that I ever worked for. I always appreciated your candor. For those who don't know, if you sense a little accent, he's an anchor breaker from New York. I think he was in the witness protection program, and he came. What year did you come to Louisiana?
81.
Yeah, he's a Southern boy now, even if he don't want to admit it, but he still has that Yankee accent.
Yeah.
So when I worked under you and you were my shift lieutenant, you had expectations of us. I don't see that people have expectations from their officers like they used to, or else they're scared to implement it. You don't necessarily have quotas, but don't you agree that a supervisor on a day-to-day basis should assess the crime trends and stuff that's happening during their time frame and tell their officers, hey, we have this expectation. You need to make arrests. You need to write tickets. You need to do the enforcement that you were paid to do, because we don't have a lot of enforcement going on now. And you know as well as I do, a traffic stop, a reasonable suspicion stop on a guy on a bicycle, that's doing things wrong. You can get drugs, guns, which leads to bigger things, because some of these guys that are carrying the drugs and guns around, they're breaking into cars, they're breaking into houses. I think we're kind of getting away from that component of police work. Do you think that, as I asked you earlier, is it something that we'll ever get back, or is it something that's just kind of fading because old school people like us aren't there anymore?
Well, I think it definitely has to come back if people want to live in a safe society again, where they don't have to worry about going out the door. I mean, there's always going to be a little element of danger when you put mass people inside an urban area, but it's out of control now. So yeah, it has to come back. Every day the police officer or the lieutenant isn't making his officers do the job, is another day the criminal's making more money and doing what he wants to do. Just because you don't feel like doing it doesn't mean they're not working. You should be doing that. And the expectations, I saw in my career, there was a lot of people that worked for me that were in command positions that wanted to be everybody's friend. They were afraid somebody was going to say, oh, look at Gerry Bloom. He made it to the top and he changed. Well, that works out good for them, but it doesn't work out good for me when I'm being victimized and looking like an idiot because I'm not performing the job the chief expected me to do. So that's why I would go back at people. But, these people have to understand, lieutenants and all these officers in there, that this job requires them to do their job every day. And you know what the big argument was in uniform patrol when you tell them about tickets, would run and tell the union, well, Bloom's trying to make me get a quota. I don't care what you call it, okay? This is what I used to tell them. There's enough people out there, And everybody that's listening to this podcast drives a car, and at least one time driving the car goes, look at that stupid son of a gun cut. He did this, he did that. Man, I wish his cop was here. They see it. So when you're a policeman driving 8 hours a day and you know the law better than those people, you see that hundreds of times a day.
Right.
And I used to tell them, all you have to do is pull these people over, check their paperwork, and if they're saying, officer, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention, you say, okay, have a nice day. And you've created a situation where it's a positive response with the public because you didn't give them a ticket. Now, the guy that steps out of the car and starts cussing you out, telling you ain't got nothing better to do, my response always was, yep, but I'm not doing it right now. Give me your paperwork. And as long as he cussed me, I kept flipping tickets.
Right.
One time this man said to me, how long are you going to write? And I looked at him and said, how long are you going to talk?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, I got it. And I said, well, I'm glad we could come to that understanding. And I stopped at 4 tickets. You could find cracked taillights, whatever you want. But, you don't have to. And that's a good example of you don't have to be heavy-handed with the public. You always have the upper hand. I gave that guy 4 tickets, man. He was furious. I won that battle without lifting my hands or being stupid.
Right. And that's what I'm hoping that some of these police departments kind of start. Everybody always argues, you're giving us a quota, even when I was a sergeant and a lieutenant. I've never said the word quota. I said that you have a responsibility to enforce the traffic laws and the criminal laws, not just the laws that you think are important, but the ones that the state legislation enacted. These are crimes or traffic infractions that the state of Louisiana brought forward. We didn't bring them forward. It's just your job to enforce them. But you need to enforce all of them periodically just to keep order. And if you don't have order, there's going to be chaos.
That's absolutely right. Anybody that's in Baton Rouge sees the chaos right now because of lack of enforcement. You get in the fast lane on the interstate doing 78 miles an hour and the speed limit's 60 and somebody's riding your tail wanting to do 90. Okay, so that's lack of enforcement. They don't have any realization that they're going to get caught or ticketed. If you're sitting at a red light and all of a sudden your light turns green and you see this car coming and his light is red 2 or 3 seconds and they blow the interstate, that's lack of enforcement. When I first came to Baton Rouge, the American Automobile Club of America used to do, before cell phones and all these fancy computers, used to have a thing that you could ask for a trip ticket. And they would map out the route you were going on a trip with all the interstates and everything, and you just keep flipping the pages until you got to your destination. And every time I looked at one that came through 1012 split in Baton Rouge in the 80s, it said, slow down. It was stamped with police cars on it, little stamp thing they put on it. Slow down. Traffic laws strictly enforced. That's because we used to have radar on the interstate every day. We used to have people, and they just got away from all that. And the reason why they're getting away from a lot of this is because nobody wants the job because of bad management, people quitting, going to other police departments. Let me repeat that. Very bad management, people quitting, going to other police departments. You lost probably 1,000 years of experience in the past 10 years in Baton Rouge for people quitting to go work for other police departments and move their pensions and go help another city or parish where they're appreciated. Okay?
Right.
And, all these things are happening and there's not enough policemen. They're going from call to call. When you go in the car and go call to call, you don't have time to do proactive police work like we used to do. I remember when I was a lieutenant, one time we had in South Downs area, there was a daytime burglary in houses, and we couldn't figure it out. We were like, it was becoming a problem. It started to come on the news, and in those days, we didn't like that stuff on the news. I went in roll call, and I just said, listen, I want you guys to start thinking about if you see a U-Haul truck backed up in the driveway or something, get out and check and make sure that's the guy that owns the house. And it was 2 hours later, you and somebody else found a U-Haul backed up in the driveway, and that was the burglars. They were using U-Haul trucks, breaking in, making out like they were moving, so policemen passed them for weeks at a time until we finally figured it out. But that's when you have somebody that's willing to do the job and listen to the boss, and everybody's working together. That's the results you get. And you're not getting that now.
You're not getting it. And I remember the thing about working for a good supervisor, which was the relationship I had with you is I took it upon myself to make sure that I did as much as I could not to ever make you look bad. And I wanted to make you look good, our shift look good, and represent these people. And if you took the time and energy to tell us to specifically, target stuff, because you see the data. We didn't always see the data. We just kind of kept up with the day-to-day activity on the streets. But it's important that the subordinates understand, which is going to bring me right into another quick topic. If Pam will give me about 4 more minutes. I know you.
About 4 more minutes.
Pam, you got 4 more minutes for us?
Should we just pulled up at the grandchildren's house, so they're coming out in a minute, so we got to hurry.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is the supervisor relationship with the subordinates. Our relationship was this. You had an expectation of what you expected from me and from our squad. I got labeled Bloom's boy because you and I got along really well. We would eat lunch together and stuff, along with a few other people. And we had a relationship where there was an extreme amount of trust both ways. I trusted you and you trusted me. You overlooked some of the things that maybe I didn't do well, but you focused on the things that I did well, and it brought a lot of success to us. And I enjoyed the term Bloom's boy because I didn't take it as a jab, because I was okay having that label because I enjoyed, and I still do enjoy, our relationship. So how can supervisors focus on people? I'm not talking about the severe screw ups, but like me, I might not turn in all my reports one day, but I made 3 arrests. You know what I mean? How can we tell today's supervisors, don't be an ass to your subordinates just because you can? Give us a couple of ideas that you shared with me over the course of the years.
Okay, so first of all, back to what I said earlier in the podcast. My dad taught me that if you have an employee that's cutting up, before you actually push them off the cliff and destroy them, you pull them back and save them, and you might have a better employee. I think that is a good start point for every supervisor. You don't always have to be heavy-handed with people that are under you just because you're the boss, okay? You can talk to people. Bosses, no matter what industry you're in, whether it's police work or you're working for Ford Motor Company, they didn't put the vice president in charge of the assembly line because he didn't know what the hell's going on. You got to play to people's strengths. If I had a car flipped over on the interstate, 2 people dead, and I needed an accident fatality written, you weren't the guy I was calling. You weren't the traffic guy. But if I needed an information off the street or a murderer caught, I would put you on special assignment and let you go talk to your informants and do what you had, see what kind of information we can come with off the street. You got to play to people's strengths all the time. And, the situation that you talked about, I had a female employee that had quit and come back, and she was just not a really good employee. I don't think they ever should have hired her back. They put her on my squad, and I talked to her for about 2 weeks about being behind on police reports. And when she didn't do it, she didn't heed the warning. She got the letter, and it was a 30-day suspension. And when she read the letter, she was upset that she was losing 30 days of pay. Well, it shouldn't have taken her 3 weeks to figure out this is your job, this is your responsibility, and now you're losing pay that takes care of your family. I always had this mentality. That's on you.
That's on you.
I gave you fair warning. I gave you fair warning, and you know this as well. As close as you and I were, and you were Gerry Bloom's boy, there was an incident that I don't need to go into that I wrote 2 of you up because I asked you don't do it when I was off on vacation for a weekend. And when I came back, I got drug in my boss's office, and I was like, okay,
right.
They didn't heed the warning. Yeah. Got to get a counseling sheet. And that's the thing that I really would like supervisors to start learning. Yeah. Okay. You can go eat lunch with your employee. You could be friends with them because it's your job to look out for them and make sure they're safe. And all the other things. You don't want to go knock on any doors talking to their family about they just got killed. So all those people are important to you. So you should treat them like they're important to you. But at the same time, you should look like the boss and you should act like the boss when the time comes.
And that's one thing, as we end the podcast, I'll say there was always that respect component that I had for you. You were a mentor. You made me grasp the firmer knowledge of police work, investigatory work, and stuff like that. But your friendship was valued, but it wasn't something that I used to my advantage because I don't ever remember coming to you saying, hey, I need you to do this for me. my thing was this. I wanted to make you look good, me look good. I wanted to make the citizens happy and our squad look good. And, your friendship, I never took advantage of your friendship. I took your wisdom and advice because not a lot of people are willing to share the insight that you had, the experiences that you had. And, the label Bloom's Boy was something that I was totally comfortable with. And to this day, I'm still comfortable with it. And I tell everybody, because most people don't know this, I got three write-ups from you over the course of the many years we worked together. People think that, you carried me or you treated me a certain way. No, you treated me the way that you thought I needed to be treated because I was a productive officer and somebody that you could count on. And under your leadership, the Uniform Patrol Commander at that time and the Chief of Police, I believe also gained an additional amount of respect for me because you brought forward a lot of the positive things. A lot of people only bring forward the negative things. You nominated me for Officer of the Year a few times, and I actually won in 2007. And that would have never happened if I hadn't worked for you. And for that, I'll always be grateful. But I appreciate your time, your candor, and I appreciate Pam, your wife. I know she's on Bluetooth having to hear all of us talk. But thank you, Pam. And thank you for being on, boss. And you'll always be special to me.
Well, let me just end the podcast by saying I tried to manage the best I could, but I always felt like you, especially, and some other officers that were under my command, y'all did more for me than I ever did for you. I just had to give you an atmosphere where you were able to thrive and do your job without feeling like you were being headhunted or those type of things. So I appreciate what you did for me, all those murders that you solved. And I used to get phone calls from the chief's desk and, and the Uniform Patrol Commander when I was a lieutenant saying, hey, you think Tim could call his informants? We got a problem here and we need to solve this and this. So all those things happen. And that only happens when there's an atmosphere of cooperation. So
good deal. Well, thank you.
Talking to you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I finally got to do your podcast.
That's right. I've been trying to get him on for a while, but he's on Yankee time still. I guess he forgot he was in the South. I appreciate it, boss.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.